2019, 7 o'clock. Secretary, take attendance, please.
All board members are present.
Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so today is our final interview of each of the candidates, and just to kind of outline, I'll highlight our 10-hour day in less than 2 minutes. So we started out, myself and also board member Lisa Efros, along with Brian Goby, along with our candidate Patrick Watson at 8 o'clock this morning here. We went on a tour of all of our buildings from 8 till about 11:30, 11:35. Came back here. Mr. Watson met with our cabinet from 11:30 till about 12:30. Then there was one, we didn't get over to Wing Lake, so we went to Wing Lake. Came back here at about 1:45. From 1:45 till 2:30, Mr. Watson met with our community. Then we went over to the Nature Center. We were at the Nature Center from 2:35 to 2:45, 2:50. At 2:50, we went over to the high school. We met with the students from 3 to 4. We met with the educators of our district and staff from 4:15 to 5:15. And we just left the high school. We just met with our community members again from 5:15 to 6:30. And now we're back here. So it's been a long, fun-filled day. With that, before we start our interview questions, and we thought as a board to make it fair in terms of what we remember from the first interview, so our candidates are not writing down the questions while we're asking them, we would give you a copy so you can look at the question. So we refer to a number, you'll have the question. So questions? We'll obviously take that back at the end of the evening. With that, we'll start off with Mark.
Now you have it in front of you, it's a little bit easier, but I think it'll be helpful to everyone. What did you find most interesting, or what did you learn that you didn't know upon visiting our buildings? And what did you see that you would like to improve?
Wow. Most interesting. I can't stop thinking about the farm. You know, so I did my research. You look online, you see the pictures, you read about it, but to actually step foot on that campus and see a live working farm. And then there was, I believe, a 5th grade class that was there, to see them engage in what was going on. That is something you don't find almost anywhere. And I knew there were some different opportunities in the Bloomfield Hills School District. I am still blown away by that, and all the opportunities from pre-K up through 75, 80, 90 years old, and how that can impact the community in a positive way. As far as what did I see that I'd like to improve, I was a little surprised, to be honest, the condition of some of the elementary buildings. As far as, it seems like they've been updated in a little bit, and I know there's been talk about whether or not there'll be a bond. I would hope that, you know, some type of refurbish or refresh of the elementary schools is something that would be done. That was a little surprising to me on the tour. Another thing that surprised me was the Nature Center. And I didn't get a chance to talk to the gentleman who runs it. I'm sorry, I forget his name right now, Dan, but the passion of both gentlemen at the farm and the Nature Center, you could tell, A, they cared about kids, and B, how passionate they were about what they were doing. And I know with the farm, I got to see some of the plans and a vision. And the best part of his vision was how it impacted students in a positive way. You can see that everything he wanted for the future would be great for kids, and why it would be great for kids. It was just, it's mind-blowing. I don't have the words, so I'm sorry. Like, I want to spend just like a month there camping out like it's Cub Scouts over again in each area to really take part of that. And to have that as a community, it's unbelievable. In the pictures online, in the description on the website, don't do justice to what opportunities it actually provides.
Thank you.
So As a veterinarian, I'm also loving the farm, especially Poppy the goat, who you probably walk by. She's
Didn't get to meet the animals,
She's like a
unfortunately.
dog. Yeah. Okay, so we're on to question number 2. Thank you very much, Pat, for enduring a long day, meeting with everybody, tiring, and to thank, I really want to thank all of the community members, students, teachers, kids who led the group around in our different buildings. I think that's amazing. Okay. What is your vision for education here at Bloomfield Hills Schools and your guiding educational principles? What would you like to implement to help BHS make your vision a reality? And could you reference specific researchers or writings that have guided your beliefs?
Okay, sure. So first part of the question, I would say that school needs to be transformational. And I think it's really important that we provide those opportunities to students to have that say, but adults as well, for it to be transformational. I talked about this in my first interview, how learning needs to be more experiential. And I think that if you look at the research that's out there, going back all the way to Gardner and multiple intelligences and all of that, it really makes a difference. Students need to have those different types of activities to see what's going to best suit them, because not every lesson is going to meet the need of every student. As far as what I'd like to implement to make the vision a reality, I think now's the great time when you're working on a strategic plan to really set that vision. And then what does that look like? What does that sound like? How do we incorporate through a lens of equity as well and inclusion to make sure that everyone's included in those different decisions? So it might be a situation where you put together a student council, a student government to get feedback. Because it's great to say, here's what a disposition of a learner is, but to actually bring in that 3rd grader or that 5th grader and that 6th grader, what does that look like to you in a classroom? What does that sound like to you in a classroom? Because we're always saying as adults, here's what it should look like, here's what it should sound like. And I think we need to, as part of that strategic plan to really make it work, have that student congress or that student group together to get their input, because they're going to use different verbiage and language than the adults are going to use. And their perspective is going to be a little different. And if we're truly trying to meet their needs and impact them, we need to have that as part of the story that goes along with it.
So Pat, how would you determine the strengths and capabilities of your key administrative reports? And how would you hold them accountable?
Okay. Well, accountability is always a big question, right? I think in order to hold people accountable, you need to make sure you set what the criteria is. So when we talk about what are the expectations, what are your responsibilities, what is it I need of you to do? A lot of times I think in education, we don't make those clear. And when there's clear, you have it's kind of ambiguous. And when that happens, people don't even know. And then you start having those conversations where someone says, oh, I didn't understand that was expected of me. I'm really sorry. I'll do that next time. I'll make sure that's included. I think for any leader to be successful and hold people accountable, and sometimes when you use the word accountability, people see that as, oh, are you going to be mean? Are you not a nice person to work with? That's not what it is. We all need to make sure we're all on the same page. We all need to make sure we understand what the expectations are. And when those expectations aren't met, what does accountability mean? Sometimes it's a conversation. Sometimes it's the opportunity to coach someone up so they can improve in the area. Sometimes it goes a little bit deeper than that. It all depends on the circumstance and what has occurred at that time.
Thank you.
Hi, Pat.
Hi.
They gave me the same question almost. I'm going to change it a little. We're a high-achieving school district. How will you ensure meaningful high educational standards are set with a future upward projection, clearly communicated both internally and externally, and ensure they're met or exceeded?
I think one of the first things that we all need to sit down and look at is just where we're at with all the curriculum we have. We continually add. We never look to take anything off. I think we need to, within the framework of the strategic plan, make sure that we're deciding what are the power standards or standards we really need to meet. What is it every child really needs to know to move forward and be successful? And then how do we leverage all the great things that are already in the district to meet those needs. And then how are we articulating that, not just to our students, but to our parents as well, because the expectation is so much of this work gets done at home. And I know as a parent, I often felt like, I understand a little bit what you're trying to do, but I've never seen this. I don't understand why we're doing this. I think we kind of leave the parents out a little too much of how they can assist with their student. And that leads to a lot of frustrations because they don't understand how it's graded or what the expectations were. So I think that all has to be part of aligning the curriculum, which I believe is part of the process that's going on right now. And that's something I'd like to get additional feedback from, especially from those that are the experts at each different level, and see really where they're at and get that additional feedback from the staff as far as what they feel are going to be the important things. And I know there was another part. Oh, and the goal is obviously to exceed and not just looking at a national level. I think we need to look at the individual student. How can each individual student make progress, whether that means it's at the national level or this class has students that are ranked in the 98th percentile. It really does boil down to the individual student. So if that student in second grade's reading at a first grade level, we're able to move them throughout second grade to the second grade level and maybe a little bit past that, that's something that should be celebrated as well.
Thank you.
I'm at question number 5. How do you see the role of the school foundation in partnership with the district?
I think it needs to be a key part of the school district. I'm not sure how it kind of fits in right now, but it should be another branch of what we're doing. Foundations are kind of new. I know my current district is something that we implemented a while ago during budget cuts. I would really like to see the foundation serve to benefit all students, not that it's not already, but really become more robust. And I think a big part of that can be reaching out to different corporations for sponsorships and getting their involvement, and then making sure that the community knows more about it, especially those that don't have school-age children. A lot of times my experience has been you have people that are looking for tax deductions and write-offs and things like that at the end of the year. This could be a good way they could give back. Maybe they want to fund, $5,000 and give $1,000 out a year in honor of a family member that, they really respected that was a teacher. And then you say, well, this grant is, the John Doe grant because of this reason, and they're giving the money for that. So I think there's some different things that can be done there that I think would be very beneficial for the school district. I'm not sure how it's kind of evolved at this point, not being in the district, but it's something I'd like to learn more about. I did have a chance to talk to a couple of community members that were very passionate about today and did see some future ways to kind of scale it and provide more support for teachers and staff.
You've just walked into your first cabinet meeting. What is your primary message to your team? What do you want them to take away from the meeting relative to A, you as their boss, and B, your vision for leading the district? Additionally, please answer the same for principals and union leadership. So this is many different parts.
I'm actually going to have to look at this one.
Yeah.
Sorry. So can I use the first part?
1A.
All right, so the primary message is the same for every group. It doesn't matter if you're a student, a custodian, assistant soup, principal, parent, the message is the same. Coming in as a new person, I'm just a person. I'm not part of a team. I'm not part of your team. We now have a group. We don't have a team, right? You can't step in day one and say, okay, we're a team, this is great. It's not how it works. So we need to talk about how we move from being a group to a team. And for something like that, I would work with Oakland schools because I think it's going to be important for us to, get to know each other and set some of those norms. There's going to be that awkward time period where the trust isn't there because you can't trust someone you don't know, that you don't have a relationship with. That's something that has to be built. And the sooner I can build it, the better. The way to do that is based on, I said this in my first interview, the only way possible is based on conversations. And a lot of those conversations are going to be one-on-one to build relationships. I knew for the longest time that when I went to work, the superintendent had the best interests at heart for me. I knew that because they invested in me as a person. There's a reason that two of them serve as my mentors today that I talk to as often as I can. They've had that type of impact in my life, and that's something I hope I can do. So the message is going to be same. What do I want them to take away from the meeting? That I'm open, I'm honest, and I'm upfront. I'm always going to call it how I see it, no matter what it is. And I would expect them to do the same. Had a great conversation with an art teacher today at the high school. And he said he felt like there used to be an open door policy, and that I used to be able to come in superintendent's office or any office, central office, and say, you know what, I'm frustrated. Here's what's going on. And we used to be able to sit down and problem solve. And he feels like that's something that's gone kind of out the window. That's something that's very important to me, because if people don't feel comfortable coming to you and sharing those things, it makes it harder to move forward as an organization. And we all know, whether you're in business or whatever field you're in, same public education, you're either getting better or you're getting worse. And if you don't have that critical feedback, those things you don't want to hear, you can't get better, because you don't know where people stand. And when they don't voice it, what happens? Then they become bitter. Then they have the conversations outside of the meeting after the meeting. Then they're in the community saying, you know, I'm really frustrated this happened. Well, did you go talk to the superintendent? You talk to him? For what? They don't listen. They don't care. Why bother? That breeds horrible culture. So people need to know they can come and be honest, right? We live in a time and age, especially for staff, where they feel if they say something, their program might get cut, their job might get cut, they might get reassigned. That's all bad culture. And I'm not saying that's here. I'm just saying that's been my experience of talking to people throughout southeastern Michigan and what's going on in education. Your vision for leading the district, it needs to be a collaborative vision. We all need to decide, all stakeholders, what are we about? If someone says, you know, hey, you know, Ms. Cook, tell me about Bloomfield Hills Schools. What is it about? What do you hang your hat on as a board member? What do you say? This is what we're about. This is how we go about educating our children. This is our vision, and this is how we're executing it. If everyone doesn't know that, then what are you really doing? What are you really accomplishing? What you have then is everyone working in silos trying to promote what they're doing. You have no alignment, and that also leads to a lot of distrust when it comes to education, because people are nervous. The job in education's changed a lot over the years. You know, I know I haven't been in it forever, but 26 years is a little bit of time. When I first got in education, it was not the way it is today. It has changed a lot. How are we going to support not just our students, but our staff with that change? And that needs to be part of the vision as well. As far as principals, union leadership, again, it needs to be collaborative. If you looked at the materials I turned in, one of my recommendations was from the union leader, the WBA leader, someone I've had a great relationship with. You can't put yourself in those moments where people feel like you're always trying to catch them off guard, or you're trying, you know, those gotcha moments. It needs to be that open communication all the time. And at the end of the day, we might disagree. But you're going to know the why something happened. And you will have had the chance to say your piece and tell me where you're coming from. And I think so often in education, because we're so busy, there's so many emails, we've lost that personal touch, and that personal touch makes all the difference in the world.
You mentioned a second ago an art teacher you talked to today. Kind of feeds into my next question. What is your philosophy on supporting the arts, and how would you try to build a sense of community around our arts program across the district and the greater BHS community?
I think there's kind of 4 pockets we need to look at, and arts is one of them. So we're looking at academics, arts, athletics, and activities. So as part of the strategic plan, what are we doing to support those different areas? Pre-K all the way through grade 12. As far as specifically what would I do, I can't answer that right now. I have an opinion, but I really would need to get more feedback from all the stakeholders, because as you get more feedback and more information, your opinion can change, and you need to be open to different ideas. And that's something I'm definitely open to. But I know as we've tried to align things where I'm currently at, in those 4 areas, we want to be able to articulate to a parent, hey, my child's really passionate about the arts. What do you have? What does it look like? I've got a kindergarten or first grade. If we move in, what's that going to look like for their 12 years, 13 years in your school district, and be able to articulate that. For a student, parent comes and said, you know, I've got a 9th grader and a 6th grader, and they're involved in student council and student leadership, and they want those type of different activities and clubs. What is that going to look like? Or my son's passionate about academics. He created his business when he was in 3rd grade and made $45,000, and you know, what do you have that's really going to challenge him? And same for athletics. You know, probably my son's a great student, my daughter's a great student, but they're also very involved in sports and they're playing it at the club level. What are you doing to promote that? So those 4 areas, I think, and I know it was about arts, but I really think you have to look at those 4 areas. So within that strategic plan, what are we doing? Pre-K, you got those GSRP students, all the way through. Of course, it's going to be scaled differently. What you do for a 3-year-old is different than a 3rd, right? Obviously, they're not playing, you know, the violin and, you know, after their diapers being changed, which I got to see in one of the buildings today. That was interesting. Brought back those memories I didn't necessarily need, but anyways, off on the tangent. Yeah, so, so that would be something. And again, that would be part of the fun, part of the work. Right? If everything's centered around what are we going to do? What can we financially afford? And then how can we make it the best with what we can afford for all students? Those are actually the fun conversations. That's the enjoyable part of the job. That's what everyone wants to be involved in. Hopefully that's what you signed up to be on the board for, was for those discussions. Now the other conversations have to take place as well, but the focus should be on those student-centered things.
The next question goes to one of the other 4 pockets that you were just talking about. What is your philosophy on supporting athletics, and how would you try to build a sense of community around our athletic programs across the district and in the greater Bloomfield Hills Schools community?
Okay. I think I have a huge passion for educational athletics. Obviously, I've been involved in that as a district athletic director. Also, my 4 years on the Michigan High School Athletic Association Representative Council. So obviously, I have a background there. A couple of different things with athletics. I think there needs to be a sense of pride, but it needs to be from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. Talking to some of the student leaders today, they felt that it might be just a little difficult for them to collaborate with some of the buildings to kind of get in and promote that. And it really should be all roads lead to the high school. And part of that also needs to be embedded into whatever the recruitment and retention plan is going to be. When you see older students that come into your building and are working with younger students, it builds a sense of pride. It makes those young students say, I want to grow up and be like him. I want to grow up and be like her. I don't know how much of that's going on. As far as leveraging what can be done athletic to promote it better, I would like to take a look at the website. There is an opportunity through a different vendor to have a more robust opportunity that allows coaches to go online, add pictures, add articles. It can be something that you also work with the school newspaper. In the school newspaper, you can say, you know what, Mr. Colin, you're going to be in charge of girls tennis this year. You're going to take pictures, and then you're going to submit the pictures in your story after every match you can go to as a news reporter to this portal, which then once you send it out and it's approved by the athletic director, it goes right away on the website, it goes right away on Facebook, and it goes right away on the athletic Twitter. It automatically pushes that out. Then now you decide, hey, I want to apply to whatever school for journalism. You've now been published multiple times, and you can reference that in your application. I think a lot of people, if you don't have that type of platform for athletics, other than PK Sports, how do you know what's going on? How do you know? As board members, as community, you have no idea. And that allows community members and relatives who live anywhere in the world to go online and say, oh, I wonder how the game went last night. Let me see, and click on it. You can also use the system to stream things live, so there's some opportunities there. And it's not just about the athletics. It's about building that sense of community, building culture, making that young person all along think they're coming to the high school and this is where they want to be, not just at the transition points.
We're on question 9.
Okay.
We have a draft vision statement for Bloomfield Hills Schools, and it says that Bloomfield Hills Schools will lead the nation in educating and empowering every learner every day with compassion and integrity in a welcoming environment. So the question is, what does this vision statement mean to you, and how during your first couple of years on the job would you go about implementing it?
Okay. Right now, it doesn't mean a whole lot to me, to be honest, because I don't know what that means to me as a community. I could tell you what it would mean to me in West Bloomfield. I could tell you what it would mean to me growing up in Ann Arbor. I could tell you what it would mean to me in Plymouth Canton. I need to hear what that sounds like from all the stakeholders and from you as well. I can't just pretend I know how you feel, because different words mean different things to different people. I shared a story about that earlier with the text message my son sent me when he said yup, and he meant, his interpretation was, yes, I'm doing it right now, don't worry about it. I took it as maybe a little disrespectful, so to speak. So I really need to collaborate with everyone to see what that really means. And then once I have an understanding of what it means, how do we accomplish that? It's great to have all these visions and mission statements, and in college we write them all the time, and we do them in school districts. But how do you bring life to it? How do you make the teacher who's teaching that 3-year-old, the 3-year-old student understand that? How do you make it so that the 3rd grade teacher at Eastover knows what it really means to her or his students in the class? How do you bring life to it? I think that's going to require more conversation, because typically, my experience, you build your vision statement, you build your mission statement, you roll it out, you hang it up, and nobody can tell you what it means 2 years after it's done. Then what have you really done? What have you really accomplished? Maybe not a lot.
So our community is a fairly robust size and with diverse levels of engagement. We value this engagement and inclusivity, yet we have had challenges and perceived lack of transparency and timely responsiveness. To this point, what is or are the best ways to disseminate important information, such as student progress, district events, to both enrolled families and to the entire community as applicable, and gather input and feedback?
Okay. A couple of different ways. Every platform as possible, whether it's social media, email. I know a lot of people use Facebook. So you need to put it out there as much as possible so people have the opportunity to have the opportunity. And I wonder if there's a way through a local news source to maybe leverage some of the things that are going on in the district that is put in there, even if it's at a nominal fee, so that it's going to everyone's home on a quarterly basis or maybe a yearly basis, so they have some of that information. Television, cable TV is another way. If you're looking for the information, it shouldn't be too difficult to find. It sounds like that you may or may not have a plan, but if you do have a plan, maybe it's not hitting all those different things. And as far as being transparent, you're always better off, my experience has been, is being upfront. People are always going to find out. People always know. And people are always much more appreciative when you own it and you're upfront about it and you say, here's what we're going. Maybe you should have known 2 days ago, but we do have the information now. Here's the information, instead of just letting it lie there. Is there another part? Okay.
As you know from your building tour, we are very proud of our nature center and our farm. What ways, in addition to what we are currently doing, would you leverage the farm and the nature center?
So at the Nature Center, I mean, with the shift to NGSS, K through 12, claim, evidence, reasoning, how do humans impact the environment? I mean, that is a every absolute year thing. Looking at sustainability, looking at, was it the buckthorn or something that was invasive at that point? Maybe with the older students, how could we go about treating it? Maybe with the kindergarten students, touch it, feel it, what is it, where does it come from? Why is it a problem for our environment? Just, there's so many different things. The other thing I'd like to do, and I don't know where, but I did have a brief conversation with someone, there might be 3 or 4 other school districts nationally that have a farm or a nature center. And how can we reach out to them and see what they're doing, or best practices? Or growing up, I spent time at Domino's Farms. I would like to see what they're doing with their educational program that we might be able to the use here. I know there's a lot of offerings. I looked at them online. I can't memorize every single one. I know there's a 4-H program. I'm kind of curious if there's more of like a pre-vet or internship opportunities that are offered maybe at the Nature Center for a student that might be interested in conservation, and they can do an internship. Maybe at the farm, and I know there's some classes that are run out of there, but maybe there's opportunity to do an internship there. If you're looking to become, like I said, a vet or do something with wildlife management or something like that. But the opportunities are endless as far as concrete, like we're going to do A, B, and C. We're going to roll that out January 3rd as soon as we come back from break, and it's going to be amazing. I can't do that, to be honest, without getting more information. And I really want to see what else is going on at these other farms. You know, Mayberry has a little something as far as their park, and I know they've done some updates there. I wonder if that's something that would work at the Nature Center, depending on what they're doing. Mathi in Ann Arbor. One thing I think would be great at the Nature Center is maybe having a literary garden and really hooking in those kindergarten through 4th grade students early on into nature. So you're getting clippings from all these different, all these different authors throughout the United States, and then making it impactful for the students and tying in your ELA curriculum with that. And then as you get older, you can see in kindergarten, we planted it, we started it, and it's this because it's Frost, and this was what Frost had as his home, and kind of scale it from there, and it's something that can continue all the way through. But the farm and the Nature Center, oh my, wow, I can't get over it.
Next one is number 12. How do you deal with an incident of racism, anti-Semitism, or other form of discrimination after the community has become aware of it?
Head on. You need to be honest. You need to be transparent. This is what occurred. This is how we're handling it. And some of it you may not be able to share. It might be a violation of the Student Code of Conduct, and according to the Student Code of Conduct, we've taken action. And then what we're going to do moving forward. It's unfortunate that those circumstances happen. I've dealt with them throughout my career, in particular the past 20 years and things that have occurred. It's when you don't let the community know that something occurred. If you don't control your narrative, somebody else will. The story's going to get out there. So it's important as a district that we're ahead of it, saying, here's what happened, here's what we know so far, here's what we're going to do. When we have more information, we'll let you know. And of course, you got to make sure you're not violating FERPA or things like that with what's going on. But you need to get that information out. And you know what? It hurts. And it's painful. And it's embarrassing. And it's not fun. But it has to be done.
What is the best practice to ensure all 504s and IEPs are being implemented in various buildings?
You know, as far as what is the absolute best practice, we've done a couple different things with tracking. I don't know what the best practice is right now because I haven't seen anything in my 26 years that makes me feel like this is 100% the best thing to do. One thing that I've played around with some of my staff members so far is looking at something called IEP Connect, which is an easy way, it's a web-based application. It enables teachers to track the IEPs and 504 accommodations a little bit easier. Is that the absolute best thing? No. What I've been in the process of doing is reaching out to some other districts nationally that have well-respected special ed programs. I think we also need to make sure our teachers understand what's expected of them. So often we have teachers that are coming and changing. Education's become more transient, and we don't make sure, I shouldn't say we, I know that I could do a better job as we hire new people, making sure they understand the process and what's going on. I think so often we just assume, well, somebody has a 504, somebody has an IEP, here's the information, you know what to do. I think I've learned, and what I've done moving forward has been more clear about those expectations and how it can be done. But there is no one best practice that I've seen that I can tell you is foolproof or meets the needs of every student at this point. But that's a great challenge to have, and that's a great opportunity to work not only with the special ed department, but with leaders across the nation who feel they have a better system than what I'm currently using, or maybe what you're currently using. But I do like the idea of the IEP Connect and what that's able to do.
Pat, how would you respond to a parent who claims her or his child is not being challenged enough in school? How would you specifically like to address the needs of advanced accelerated learners? And do you see this as an issue enveloped under and possibly in conflict with equity and inclusion?
One of the things I'd like to do is review your MAP program and really see where that stands and where it's at currently. So as far as reaching out to that parent, I would ask just kind of what's going on. Where do you feel the gap is at? And then I'd like to talk to that building administrator and that teacher. Is it a matter of we just aren't able to differentiate for that student at the proper level? Is it a new teacher who didn't get the previous years upon years upon years of PD for that, and we need to provide some support for that student? Is it that really the student isn't possibly advanced and really doesn't need to be doing these additional things? I think my experience has been each case has to be an individual basis. There's no one size that fits all. I know there's a big push where I'm currently at to have more, and we do have a magnet program. I'm in a school district that has a talented and gifted program, and I've seen the pros and cons in my current district, in my home district where my students reside as well. And the goal is to meet the needs of all students. So where are you, and don't expect to answer, as a district with all the investment you made in differentiated instruction, does it still exist, or are so many people left that it no longer plays a role the way it should? Is that something we need to continue to do? Or do we need to really look at maybe partnering with Michigan State with advanced math and doing that program? Again, these are all great conversations that can come out of the strategic plan when you say, if this is what the portrait of a learner is, and these are the dispositions, how do we leverage what we have? Where are the gaps? So what are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What are our opportunities? What are our threats? And then how do we fill in those different things? And that's got to be a collaborative effort. It's not going to be me talking to you on the phone, parents saying, fine, we'll do additional math sheets. We'll assign IXL so they can do it at home on the computer. That's not the answer.
What is your philosophy on diversity amongst the administration and staff? And how would you go about increasing this across the district?
Obviously, it's very important. That's the life I've lived. If we're truly, as a district, want to increase diversity in our staff, and that means all staff, right, including teaching staff, we need to look outside of Oakland County. We need to look outside the state of Michigan. Talking to someone I know very well from Michigan State University about what diverse candidates they possibly have in their program right now, she told me we have 2. My son's an education major at Wayne State. I asked my son, how many minority candidates do you have besides yourself? 3. When I talked to Dr. Beth Fiden at Oakland University, who do you have for me? Maybe a couple. If we truly want to do it, what we're going to have to do, in my opinion, is partner with some of the top producing historically black colleges and universities and actually travel out of state and recruit the teachers, because that's where, I know only one minority group, but that's where you're going to find the potential African American teachers. You also need to partner with a real estate agent so that when you're there and say, hey, we'd love you to move to Bloomfield Hills. Well, how much are apartments? What's the cost of living? What's the community like? They have all that information. As far as finding other minority candidates, that's just as tough, but there are a few more throughout Oakland County. And that's going to be partnering with all the different universities and schools of education, making sure when they have a candidate that's there. Another thing that I don't think we as school systems leverage enough, most universities use a program called Handshake. So it's great you put your jobs on the consortium. Not everyone's going there. By putting it on Handshake, what it allows you to do is then send out that job posting to any school in the United States that signed it with Handshake, which is the majority of Michigan and probably the Midwest. And that's a good way. So here it is. We've got a posting for ELA 6th grade, and we want to make sure we get the most candidates possible. I know you just recently switched the consortium, but now going on Handshake and having that file, the HR department can click all the different universities they want to send it out to. And once that university approves it, it sends it out to all their students in the School of Education, regardless of what level they're in. So you might just be a sophomore thinking about education, you start looking at your job postings, oh, Bloomfield Hills, that's interesting. They seem to have that job quite often. I think there's more to be leveraged there. I know a lot of universities have job fairs, and I know the attendance is not the same as it used to be for school districts. I can't speak to what your job fair attendance is, but I think that's important as well because you're building relationships. I know I sit each year at the University of Michigan where they have a workshop for their eventual teachers on interviewing, things like that. And I've been able to meet some different diverse candidates during that time, and that's a good time to give your card and say, when you're done, give me a call. I want to talk to you more. Because your top candidates are filled April and May. The days of getting 300 and 400 applicants for a position and sitting down with 20 quality, amazing people and saying, wow, we could hire any of these 20. They're gone. They're over. They don't exist like they used to. And I know that's frustrating probably for you as a board, but it's competitive. People are leaving. It is more transient education staff. There's no more, I've hired you, I've invested in you, I'll see you in 30, 40 years when you retire. Thank you, Howard, I really appreciate it. That's not what's happening. So the other end of that is once we get them, how are we onboarding them? Especially if it's a diverse candidate, how are we making sure they feel welcome just like any other teacher would? And then once they've been here, what are we doing each year to make sure they feel valued so they want to stay? Because teachers right now are only as loyal as their options. And if they have a different or a better option, they're going to take advantage of it.
We're at question 16.
Okay.
Pat, could you please give us your thoughts on public school funding? What changes to the ways schools are currently funded would you lobby for? And which model would you think would be beneficial for Bloomfield Hills?
It would be great to go back to 1994 and vote no for Proposal A. Little did I know at that time that it wasn't all it was cracked up to be. And now here we are, years later, with the funding debacle that we have. I think one thing we need to look at, and this would be a difficult decision for Bloomfield Hills to support, is doing that, some type of county millage. Because then Bloomfield Hills, you're going to be a donor school. And I know that would cause maybe some people some heartache, but that would be, in my opinion, one of the quickest ways and easiest ways to generate additional funds. But then you're going to be a donor school, as with some other school districts. As far as what is the best way, I don't know what the best way is. I'd love to sit down with Tina in the finance department and see what they have to say and what their experience has been and what they feel is going to be the best way forward. And then whatever the consensus is as a district is what I'm going to lobby for, because that's what's going to best serve our district as a whole. It's not about my plan, my vision. It's about what the district's vision is. And that's her expertise. This is what she does. And I would rely on her. And that's going to be part of the listening process of hearing what all the experts in these different areas have to say. Because you can't know it all. No one knows it all. And for me to sit here and pretend I do would just be dishonest.
So do you maintain great support services for students when our district is facing budget constraints?
Part of that's going to be prioritizing. And coming from a district where we've had to make substantial cuts and then try to build back afterwards, it's important that if there ever is going to be a cut, that it needs to be as far away as possible from educating the children. They are the last group that should ever feel the impact of everything that's going on. Again, it's one of those questions where it's not really a Pat question. It's really a community, stakeholder, board question. What are we prioritizing? What are our priorities? What are our non-negotiables as a school district? And then from there, we'll need to allocate funds.
Drilling down a little bit more on the budget. what budget suggestions would you have, or would, let me see if this is actually correct grammatically. What budget would have you, or would have you? Yeah. Yeah.
I got it.
Yeah, you know.
I
it's
got
like-
it.
But I gotta read it out loud. It's, the words are reversed. What budget suggestion would you have if needed, and have you implemented in your own school when faced with budget choices that have the least impact on classrooms? So I think it's getting to demonstrated
Right.
experience, yeah.
So over the years, we rolled out different programs, and some of those are 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, and we really rely on the data. Looking at a business model, what's my return on investment? What are we really getting back? Are we really moving the needle educationally? Has it been impactful? I shared, I believe, in my first interview how we contracted with Sylvan. We rolled it out, and I was so excited, and all these students that need academic support, they're going to be so ready for the SAT, and then they're skipping and not coming and hiding and not listening to the instructor. That was a waste of money. So we decided we're not going to continue with that. You make those decisions based on data. You really have to have that. And leader support, it's been a worthwhile investment, and we should continue. And I can show you the data that supports that. Or it's time to move on and maybe not replace it and just leave it be. It just goes away, and that's what we did with that program, to give you 2 quick examples.
What is your philosophy on tutoring? If achievement are low or dropping, should extra help be the responsibility of the family or the district?
I think it really needs to be a combination of both. What the data showed me in my current position is that we needed to have more targeted tutoring. That drop-in tutoring necessarily wasn't going to be the best thing for students, where you show up and say, hey, I need help with this. So what we did is we created a way for teachers to recommend a student for tutoring. So you'd recommend, Bob, Susie needs tutoring as a teacher. You fill out a Google Doc. You would say what class, and you would say what area they would need tutoring in. And then the staff member that was doing the tutoring would then reach out to the student, reach out to the parent, and say, hey, you've been invited for tutoring. I understand you're having a little bit of struggle with this concept. Here are the times available before school or after school. We've also included within the infrastructure of our building having some labs that are open. Some of those are supported by staff, and some also have some of our National Honor Society students that are in there. So as much as possible, we want the school to be able to handle that, but there are times where maybe the gap is a little larger as a parent that you may have to reach out, and it's important that at that time we're providing those resources, whether it's the National Honor Society students, so it's free of charge, or whatever the program might be. So it's a combination of both is what I'm getting at.
What ways have you implemented to help those with lower socioeconomic households afford some of the things, like enrichments, that are a valuable part of the educational experience, but not affordable to all students?
We've really tried to embed them, and then we've been very fortunate that our foundation has covered, maybe it's a field trip cost, maybe it's an experience where it's going to be $35 for students. We've also worked with the different companies or the different programs. I can give you an example from a couple weeks ago. TEDx was in Detroit, and we had several students that wanted to go. And there is a fee, and even though the fee was $25 or $30, some of our students couldn't afford it. So we worked with TEDx to make sure that we were able to provide those opportunities for the students, and there was some negotiation that took place so that every student that wanted to go could attend. And so I don't know if that's kind of how we're using the foundation to supplement. We also have a program called our Children's Fund, which can supplement some additional needs that students may need that are non-academic. So you really try to, as a community, leverage what you have to best support everyone so that everyone is included and has the same opportunity to learn. Going back to, again, to the farm and nature center, I think about all the students in other places that may never, ever get that opportunity to see an animal, interact with an animal. And the fact that that's part of your curriculum that's provided to your students. Again, and I'll try to stop talking about the Farm and Nature Center, but I just had to mention that's another way where everyone can be included right away and have that opportunity to learn.
Do you think high school start times should be later? And what about middle school? And what about some of the obstacles to adjusting start times, and do you think these obstacles are surmountable?
I plead the fifth. No. Right, exactly. So let's talk about what we know, right? We know the data supports a later start time. So one of the difficult jobs we have is balancing student needs and being good stewards for money, that fiscal responsibility. We know that if we change, this is currently where I'm at, we know if we currently change and we start high school later, it's at a cost of $750,000 per year. At which point, are we going to cut programs? And if we're cutting programs to do that, what programs are we going to cut? On the other hand, we know students in their circadian rhythm, they need to get up a little bit later. Again, this comes down to prioritizing. Is this going to be something that's so important that as a community, as a board, as key stakeholders throughout the district, that we're going to find that money, whatever the cost is, and it is going to be cost. I don't know what your cost breakdown is. I do know
Do you see
that
it more as a cost or logistics issue?
I would need to get more information that's particular to your district to see that. I'm speaking from my experience, which is a cost issue.
Okay.
If you're talking about, does it impede, you always hear, well, athletics can't run. No, that's not the case. As a former district athletic director, I can tell you it's inconvenient, but I can tell you still can do it. Other districts have done it. Other districts outside of Oklahoma County have done it, and they still participate in athletics and events and things like that.
It's after school, it's bus scheduled, it's things like that.
Right. So I would need additional information. I do know that your cost per rider has gone from about $1,000 to $800, and I was impressed that you haven't outsourced. You were able to realize that cost savings from 2008 to 2016. So that money, I would assume, has gone into the general fund. It's been eaten up elsewhere. But I would definitely need to see where you're at in that process. I know there's a committee. I know the students were passionate about it. And I got to tell you, the students had the toughest questions. They were just, and one of those was about the start time. But I don't have a final answer without knowing more information.
Thank you.
Sorry, just a quick follow-up question. When you said that the cost analysis in your home district was $750,000,
Roughly,
is
yes.
that solely related to extra busing that's
Add an
involved?
additional tier of busing, correct.
Gotcha.
And that was per year, so you amortize it out. And there was concern that how are we going to do that when we don't know what the state's going to fund us. We know that we're all fighting for students. Everyone's fighting for the same students. We know that our younger generation's not having 2, 3, 4 children. And when they are having children, they're having children later in life. Where are the kids going to come from? If you look at the SEMCOG data and you look at the birth rate, it's concerning. And you have a community which is beautiful here, but it's so beautiful, people don't want to leave. So you're not getting all those young families that are moving in. And when you do have homes that are available, the price point is higher than other areas as well. And that becomes another hurdle that families have to jump over. So to allocate that kind of money, if that would be the case, are we really being good stewards of the money? And if it is yes, and we need to find it, and we need to move things around, then that's what we have to do. And that's what the priority is, and then we'll do it.
Can you tell us how West Bloomfield is planning to address the start time issue?
So one of the big things we're talking about right now, and I had a chance to talk to the superintendent about that, is when we open the new middle school, flipping the times from the start time from the high school to the middle school, and the middle school start time becoming the high school. So the high school then will start about 7:50, and a lot of research supports that even those additional 10, 20, 30, 40 minutes do make a difference for our students, and that would at least be a start. So nothing's definitive, nothing's definite, but that's the conversation that we've had. And of course, you know, the students would be thrilled to have something like that. And I hope that's something that does change in the future. But I hope if it does change, I'm watching it from the position of superintendent here in Bloomfield Hills, just so you know. Had to put that out there, in case you were wondering.
The next question is number 22 at the bottom of the page, and I'm going to encourage you to read along with me because I think there's a typo in here. I've tried to figure out what it is. But can you give an example of an experience in district-wide curriculum alignment and also in leadership provided at the elementary, middle school, and high school levels?
Okay. So I've had a lot of experience in curriculum. the majority of it obviously being at high school. Twice our district has worked with Oakland schools to do K through 12 district alignment, both horizontal and vertical alignment. Both times I've served on that committee and enjoyed it very much. I also taught curriculum instruction at the graduate level for 3 years, and that was working with K through 12 teachers. Again, knowing that most of my experience and so much of my experience has been at the high school, that's another part of why the listening process is so important. You can't be an expert at everything. I would really rely on those experts that are in that area to fill in the gaps I have. Then hoping to share some of the expertise I have to see how that could translate down. I've also been able, because we're such a, not a small district, but a like-sized district, and so many of the administrators have been there for such a long time, to have those conversations with the elementary level when they roll out Bridges and how's the Bridges math program going? What are you seeing? Do the kids like it? And then asking them, how's that going to translate when they get to high school with CPM and what we're doing? Is it similar or different? And then I get to share kind of what CPM looks like. They're sharing with the Bridges program. College Preparatory Math. That's the program. I'm sorry. I'll try not to use acronyms. My
EduSpeak,
apologies. Sorry. In those things. And also the conversations I've had with our current superintendent and then our last two superintendents as well, which both serve as my mentors.
Thank you.
Just a quick follow-up
Yeah.
question. And maybe I misheard, but when you were with the teacher forum, I thought I heard you mention something about having been in elementary education. Was that
No.
something okay.
No, I've been in high school my whole
Okay.
life. I mean, I've worked with teachers as far as training them on curriculum and instruction at the graduate level, but no. Every summer I've run camps since 1990, so from a student perspective, as far as knowing that student and their developmental process, I've worked with those students K through 8 every summer since 1990 and have continued to do so even though I've become an administrator and things like that.
Okay, last page. All right, sorry, this is a long one. Okay, so the strategic plan. The build-outs of the strategic plan are not finished, and that was intentional on our collective with the administration's decision pending a new superintendent. Could you give us an example of one or more SMART goals that you would like to see built into the plan in any of the goal areas? And there are 4 goal areas: academics, financial stewardship, high-quality workforce, and communications. And for the community, SMART, when I say SMART goals, SMART is an acronym, and it stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely.
So there's a lot of different goals. I would look at goal 3. And the first bullet point, a collaborative culture of trust, engagement, and growth. I think that's going to be one of the most important things. If you don't have that culture of trust, engagement, and growth, it's going to be hard to move forward with whatever the program is. So my goal would be whether it's 80%, 85% of staff members after taking that official, getting that early data, that by within a year, 85% of staff members would feel that we have a culture of trust, engagement, and growth. Again, my experience has been if you don't have those things, it's really hard to make progress because people believe in the person before they believe in a vision. It doesn't matter how great your vision and your ideas are. If people don't believe and trust what you're saying, that you're going to follow through and do what you said, you're going to have a difficult time making progress. And I think you've probably all seen that in your careers as well. And it's no different in the school system. So off the top of my head, that would be the one. There's other ones that are great, but that would be the one I would pick to go with.
Thank you.
Thank you. How would you try to ensure that we do not lose students to private schools or to try to save families thinking or considering private school, which is our largest competition for enrollment?
So looking at your data, you got a couple things going on. So roughly 23% of your possible students go to private school. I also look at the data from school choice loss. And I look at the data from 2010 to 2017. And it's continuing to go up every single year. So people are making a conscious choice not to attend Bloomfield Hill schools. One of the first things we need to find out is why. There needs to be some type of exit survey. If you don't know why people are leaving, you can't make adjustments. Not that you could save them from leaving. Also, what are we doing to build that sense of community? And what are we doing at the transition points? We know typically in a school district when people leave, it's at those transition points. So whether it's from elementary to middle or middle to high. And I think we need to leverage, and I talked to the student leadership, students at the high school that are involved in the student leadership class about some ideas that they have and some ideas that I've had experience with, is using them as ambassadors to the school district. All roads need to lead to the high school. You have a beautiful high school that has offerings that are second to none throughout the United States. How does that parent see that child in that program? How do they know it's going to be a good fit? How many opportunities do the elementary and middle schools have to come to the high school? Whether it's for activities, whether it's for athletics. I know one of the things we've done in my current position is for our middle school, we always allow them to come up and play 1 or 2 games at the high school and invite the parents in. And that's a great way for the students to see the facilities, interact with the high school administrators. I know that as part of our future Lakers program, we're always leveraging going to each building and making sure we're active in those buildings, knowing that when you get older, you want to come. You want to be at the high school. And that's part of the relationship building process. So what are we doing? When I first got into education in Oakland County, the thought was, we're going to educate those students that come to us. If you don't want to come, have a great career, enjoy wherever you're going, we'll be fine. We have to compete. University of Michigan's a great example. Look at the number of Common Apps they get every year. It goes up every single year. They're not short for students. Can we agree to that? Look at how much money they spend on advertising, on marketing, on getting out their message. I'm not saying as a district we need to spend a ton of money. What is the message we're getting out to the community? I asked you before, what do you hang your hat on with Bloomfield Hill Schools? What is it that really separates you apart? And how is that being communicated to the younger families? How many events are the younger families invited to the high school? Do you invite that? Every building has a PTO, correct? So I would guess that each year, each building principal has one PTO meeting at the high school so that the high school the elementary parents or middle school parents can be on at the high school. I also would probably guess that then you invite student leadership or other kids to come in and tell the families for this PTO meeting, bring your kids. We have all these great activities for your kids to participate at the high school. Are you doing those types of things? And if not, I would ask, why not? You have to be strategic. You have to compete for kids. It's a necessary evil. It's not what we should have to do in education because we should be funded properly. We're not. So we can continue to sit and complain we're not going to get money, or we can do something about what we can control. We can control the message in the community we build. We can control access to the buildings and people coming in. We can control people understanding what the message is of why it's so great to go to this elementary school. And if you like it there, Mr. Bank, and your kid's happy, wait till you get to the middle school. Here's some opportunities for your child to be in the middle school. You like it at the middle school? Wait till you get some opportunities to be at the high school, and your kid's been there a couple days. So if your child from first grade up through 8th grade had 5 or 6 opportunities at the high school, and maybe one time they got a water bottle, maybe one time they got a shirt, they were invited to be at a game, they were invited to go to the play, or for example, one of the things we do in my current position, we have a children's play. And we invite all the community to come. But we also have the children's play during the week, and then we bus in all the different students to see the play. And part of that is wait till you get to the high school. You are going to love it. This is where you want to be. So you've built all those positive memories. You've built all those relationships. You built all those connections. So when the parent says, hey, would you like to shadow at Marion or Mercy or Country Day or Cranbrook? What are you thinking? Oh, no, I want to go to the high school. I've always loved going to the high school. I know Mr. So-and-so. I know Mrs. So-and-so. That's going to be a great place for me. And that's some of the things that I've worked on, K through 12, as part of our Future Lakers program. I mean, we're strategic down to the point with what hashtags we use on social media. So it's easier to track and find out what's going on. So you'll see only WB, Laker Pride, Future Lakers. These are all things that need to be strategic. So if you don't have a recruitment and retention plan that's working, my opinion is there really needs to one needs to be built. And that would be, again, a collaborative effort involving community members, building administrators, central office, the school board. You have to compete.
How would you connect our community without school children to our district? How would you build community to the greater Bloomfield Hills residents within our district, with our district?
All right, so how would you connect our community without school children to our district? So a couple things I've done in my past experience. So one thing I mentioned was Family Fun Night, which is an annual event we just had. I believe it was our 9th year. And that involves all community members. And we celebrate our men and women in uniform. So that brings in retired vets. It brings in all of our police, and we have all the military that comes in as well. So that's when we've kind of done that. Another thing we implemented about 5 years ago was a winter walking program. And so for a nominal fee, you signed up for a winter walking program. And that allowed you after school hours on certain days to come to the high school. And as part of the program, you got a t-shirt, you got a water bottle. All this might sound kind of hokey, but it makes a difference. Because when you're asking people, oh, I heard this is going on in the buildings, for you to be able to say, oh no, I go there Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. That's not what's going on. Or you're out mowing your lawn. Why do you have a Bloomfield Hills Blackhawk shirt on and you're retired, you're not on the board? Oh, well, I walk there on Saturdays and Wednesdays. Those small things. And this kind of surrounds what we talked about in the first interview with the bond. Everyone needs to feel like they're getting something out of it. So it's great to say it's all about kids and we really care about the kids. For that person who's in your community that doesn't have kids in the school district, what is the enticement for them to vote for it? How are we building community? What are they going to get? I'm not saying they have to have this great palace of things to do and in swimming pools and aquatic centers and all that, but they need to feel a part of it. So how historically have we welcomed the community in if they don't have school-age children? How have we reached out? Are we doing a senior citizens prom? Are we offering some of our spaces in our buildings free of charge for a bingo night or things like that? And I get you want to charge and have revenue come in, but sometimes you need to do things that are just nice because it's the right thing to do without seeking the little bit of money you're going to get. And if there's not a plan to bring the community in with who don't have school-age children, then that's another conversation that needs to be had. How are we going to do it? And one of the best ways is to see what community members that are retired that don't have students would be willing to come in. Maybe it's 2, maybe it's 8. What do you feel about the schools? What would make you get more involved? How are we leveraging the nature center? Maybe there's some type of programming, maybe it already exists, that we can do for our retired community that makes them more involved, or they're more involved in the farm. How can we leverage those two? I'm back to the nature center and farm. Sorry.
That's awesome.
But that might be an opportunity there. And that's just thinking on the spot. I'm sure you have better ideas, more robust ideas. But when you have that sense of community and people really buy in, they see why it's important to fund schools. And you're not going to get everyone. I'm not naive. There's always going to be people who say, I love it here. I'm going to live here forever. I go to Boca during the winter. I'm going to vote no. Now that I can get my absentee ballot, whatever you want, I don't care when you put it on. It's going to be no, and then it's going to be no, and it's going to be no. But there will be some other people that will say, you know what? I get what you're doing. I appreciate you reaching out and letting me be included as part of the educational process. Another thing we've done is we've brought in retired people to help tutor in the classroom and work with our students. It's a great way to give back. They feel like they're involved. And again, they're spreading the narrative in the community of what's going on. The schools want more money. Well, I got to tell you, I volunteer once a week, every other month. And there really is a need. And the kids are working hard and the teachers are working hard and it's really different. And you really should think about doing it. There's a lot of good things that can come out of this. They become your spokespeople for you and they feel connected.
All right, so That's the end of our questions we have on paper. So what we'll do now is I do have one final question. And then maybe all of our colleagues, if you have either a follow-up or one other question that we didn't ask, we'll just go around and we'll have 7 additional questions or follow-up. So my question to you before we do that is, do you have any questions for us?
I'll save it until you're done, in case it leads to something else.
Okay, all right. Mark, do you have any follow-up or another question?
No, not at this time. I've been very thorough.
I'm good. I'm on hour 14 now, so I
Okay,
think I've
you're
asked
hanging in
all
there.
my, all
Go
my
team.
questions, yeah.
Hour 14. Cynthia?
I'm going to pass for a moment.
Okay,
I might-
feel free to
I'm
come
working
back.
on one. I'm working on one.
Okay.
Come back to me.
All right, I do have one.
Okay.
It's a follow-up.
Sure.
So regarding the question that Cynthia asked about students that go to private schools that we're competing for, so if there were students that have indicated that they're thinking of leaving across the district, what would be your strategy in terms of trying to save those students?
There needs to be a call from the superintendent. That's the most impactful phone call that can be made. I heard that you applied to go to Marion. I was wondering if you would possibly come by and visit the high school for me, or if it's elementary level, if you would come and visit Conant or Eastover with me. I think there's really a lot of great programs that, is that a possibility? And it might be, no, I'm not really interested. Thank you very much. For religious reasons, we're selecting this school. I went there. That's great. But that's impactful. And if that parent does show up, that's a great time to meet then with the teachers and give them a great tour of the building. And when you have a leader who's the person that actually makes that call, that makes a big difference. So even though that person says they're not going, so I heard you didn't put your kid at, Eastover. No, we went here instead. But you know what? The superintendent gave me a call when he heard that I wasn't going, and that was really nice. I really appreciated that. That was great. A lot of people wouldn't do that. It's those attention to details. Everyone wants to feel their kid is valued. Every parent wants to feel that their child is the most important thing to them. They want you to feel the same way. And that's one way to show it. We talked about before that we all give building tours and things like that. In my building, I give 99%. And that means I know I have to do a lot of things after hours or early in the morning, and that's fine. Because I want people when they come in to know that their child's going to be that important. So that's how I would handle that.
And then just one follow-up. How would you try to identify those that may be not as obvious, that may be at risk?
So that's a good question. I think one of the things that I've done in my experience, and that's only been through 6th grade, through high school, is that when they're making those transition points, you have them fill out almost like a national letter of intent, committing to where they're going. And they sign, okay, my plan is to go to Bloomfield Hills High School, my plan is to go to West Hills, or my plan is to look at private, or I'm unsure. And then those people that are definitely unsure need to be reached out to again. And when people do leave, there needs to be some type of exit survey, and I know it's a pain, and I know it takes time, but how can you get better or improve in that area if you don't know why people are leaving? We all guess, right? We all make up, oh, it's probably because of this. I heard it's this. I heard it's that. I found in my experience that people are very honest, the parents are very honest on the exit surveys that we give when they're leaving. And I think that's really important to know. It's an important detail.
Okay, I'm gonna take back my question.
Okay.
So how do you handle, first of all, parent complaints? And then to the next level, perhaps parents that complain a lot and consistently.
Okay.
There's two
Yeah.
kind of, right?
That's what I deal with every day now,
Yeah.
right? So you have to be a good listener. And a lot of times that takes a lot of time out of your day. And I think for a lot of parents, they want to understand the why. They may not agree, but we need to have an understanding as a school district. These are the decisions we're making. Here's the rationale behind it. You might be frustrated as a parent. We might have to agree to disagree, but I'm going to let you know why those decisions are made. And I'm really sorry you're frustrated, and I'm really sorry this didn't turn out the way it did. But this is why we do what we're doing, and we really need to find a way to move forward. Other times it's going to be, you know what? That's a great point. How can we problem solve together with what's going on? Or how can we improve that in the future? Your child's already gone through it. It wasn't the experience you had hoped for. There's some opportunity for growth and learning in that. How can we work together to collaborate and really make that improvement? Everyone's not going to be happy. I get that. I'm not always happy. I wish I was. But again, I brought this up in my first interview. It needs to be student-centered. And then when you boil it down to the individual basis, that's often where you get that frustration. Well, that's not what's best, in my opinion, as a parent for that student. Well, here's why we're doing it, and here's why we made that decision on behalf of all students.
Like to take my question?
Okay. Oh, boy. Here we go. Wow. Wow, okay. All right.
So if
Yes.
we choose you to be our superintendent, what professional networks, what administrative associations, how would you do professional development to enhance your skill set?
Right. I think that's incredibly important. I think you always need to be open to learning and a lifelong learner. So MASA is one. One thing that I've done is I've got 4 mentors right now. 2 are retired Oakland County superintendents, actually that you both know, and 2 are current superintendents, 1 in Oakland County and 1 that's in Battle Creek that would serve as mentors. I believe regardless of how long you've been in a position, you always need a mentor. Even if you've been teaching for 30 years, you always need a mentor. So I think those 4 can fill in a lot of those gaps that, again, you can't know everything, right? To be honest. And then having the opportunity to get that additional professional development. And I think those 4 people will have some great ideas. And then, of course, the opportunities, whether it's MASA or maybe there's something going on with MASB that would be appropriate for me to attend. You constantly have to learn and improve yourself. Thank you for asking that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gonna
Oh, boy,
take
here we
that,
go.
right?
All right.
So get the talkers talking.
Mark, you're next. You're next, Mark.
No, so I'm just going to reiterate a question for the community that a parent asked you after lunch today, because
Sure.
I enjoyed the question, I enjoyed the answer. You know that our other superintendent finalist is a current employee of the
Right.
district, well-known to the entire community. And so what would you like to say to us and the entire community who know you less well, in terms of what you bring to the table, coming in with less institutional knowledge, potential benefits, potential challenges, what would you like to say about that?
So the challenge is I don't know everyone, right? This isn't where I've been all my career. The pros are it's a different lens. It's a different view. It's an outside view. And I think my outside view is not just West Bloomfield. My outside view is the other districts throughout Michigan in the United States that I've been in contact and work with. I've had the opportunity via Twitter and social media to really connect with people at the Austin ISD, with Clark County, which is the Las Vegas area, looking at the Scottsdale School District and the things that are going down there. One story I shared that was great, he's no longer a principal, he's a college professor, is Danny Steele, and a lot of people probably follow him on Twitter. And I saw what he was doing at the middle school. And he had his students Skyping with the MBA office in New York about math and how you can have a career in the MBA with math. And I stole that idea and I sent him a direct message on Twitter, got how he was doing it, and shared it with our middle school. And they use it in one of our classes for students that are struggling with math, kind of like a math intervention class. And to see those students Skype with people that work at the MBA, like, you could have this job. We know there's only so many of those jobs, but they actually saw the real-life application of math and how it could be impactful and benefit them and provide a career. And that was really, really awesome thing to see. I bring a different lens for innovation. I think I've done a lot of things outside the box. When I tell people we crowdsource, they're like, you do who? What is that? Why do you do it? And I know it's a little different model. I talked about this in my first interview. We need to get outside of just saying, this is what we've done, we've always done it, because we're addicted to certainty. We all like that safety net we have. And you have to be willing to fail and try things. But the staff will never buy any of that if there's not trust. Because if you don't trust, you're not going to try. And so one of my biggest things I'll need to do is build trust. And you do that one conversation at a time, and then following through on what you said. Because people, staff, all staff, they're always looking for that new person to say something, and then they don't do it. And they go, see, there you go. They're like everyone else, full of promises and delivers nothing. So it's going to be important to have those conversations and work side by side.
I just want to there was a little confusion when you talked about crowdsourcing in your last interview as opposed to crowdfunding. I just want to let you say what's the difference.
Okay, so crowdfunding is about raising money for something. Crowdsourcing provides a platform, the way we use it, for staff to go and suggest ideas. And I talked a little bit about you have a staff meeting or you have a district-wide meeting, you say all these things, and then everyone leaves and goes someplace else and they have the meeting after the meeting. That's how education works. So instead of us sitting together saying, well, that's a great idea, if they were really in the classroom, they would know we should do this because this would be more beneficial, but nobody listens to us. That allows the staff to go on and be creative. It also allows buildings, once it's scaled, other buildings to say, hey, look what they're looking to do at Lone Pine. Look what Eastover's looking to do. Well, look at Connett's looking to do. That's a great idea. How can we take that? It's a safe place for staff to be creative and share ideas on a large platform. As far as what gets moved forward, the staff votes. You vote on what you think is the best. So it's called this pair matrix voting. The only other school district that does it is Saline. And if you really, thank you for bringing that up, if you really want to get more information, because I know I only have so much time, we work with a group called Innovate K-12. And one of the main people is Eric Schneider, and he's an assistant superintendent in the state of Minnesota. And so we've collaborated with him on that experience, and this is our second year of running it. It's something that can also be tied in potentially to the foundation, so that as teachers are applying for these different grants, they can do it on this platform. And I know there's been some conversation I had with somebody today about, well, we really want the grants to tie in with what we're doing with teaching and learning. And my thought was, well, once we have the final strategic plan, if those dispositions are something that are going to be in there, then your application for the grant should hit on those different dispositions and how you would leverage what we're trying to do as a district as part of that grant.
Yeah, no, I mean, I never defer, so I'm taking, so do I get to, no, just kidding.
Defer to Howard.
No. My question really is about some of the creative ways that you have used to work within the parameters of the resources that you have available to you. So you talked a little bit in your application about things like opening AP classes to freshmen if they self-identify, self-select, and then some of the partnerships with different programs, different universities. Can you talk about some of those ideas and how you thought of them and how cost effective they are, and what the opportunities are to students?
Right. So some of them came up just from brainstorming sessions we had. Some of them came up student-led. As far as aligning with the different universities, it's been at no cost to the district. For some of the smaller schools, like a Lawrence Tech or Bowling Green State University, they were just happy to have a foot in the door and have an opportunity to meet firsthand so many students that could potentially attend their school because academically they're going to be able to attend. The early conversations we've had with Northwood, same type of thing. We would like to have a foot in the door to get in more often. So by partnering with you, we hope we get more of your students. So really there's a return on investment on their end. And I know I've done a lot of different things and a lot of maybe outside the box ideas for some people. Not every idea that works where I'm currently working is going to possibly work here. A big thing is going to be listening to what every stakeholder has to say about, here are some ways we really can improve. And it might be something I've done before. It might be something totally different. It might be something a teacher or a student says, wouldn't it be great if we had this? And whatever this is, and implement it from there. So I'm not thinking that if I'm fortunate enough to get the position that I'm just going to take what I did, just plop it down here and say, that's it. that would be really disrespectful to all the people that have put in all the hard work here. It needs to be something they can see as a fit, and if it's not a fit, what else can we do? What else is innovative and provides opportunity, choice, and voice, not just for students, but for staff as well?
So, sorry, just to follow up.
Yeah.
So many of those ideas and program connections came from your staff, and how do you encourage them to bring those kinds of ideas forward? And, how do you know what's going to work and what won't work?
So,
How do you decide which ones to follow through on?
right. So there's kind of like a vetting process, and that goes through having conversations at the administrative level. A lot of them were ideas that, we saw or I saw in another school district out of state and said, wouldn't that be great here? How do we go about doing that? And that would be just picking up the phone call and making a phone call and saying, this is what we're thinking about doing. And part of that is that network with the universities that you have when you've been in education for a long time. What's going to work? What's not going to work? I can't tell you without talking about the people that live the Bloomfield Hills life every day. Do I think a lot of it would? Absolutely. There's some different things that I don't think would work where I'm currently at. That would be a much better fit for here that I've kind of put to the side because it wasn't a good fit for my current position. Absolutely. And I'm excited to share those ideas and hope to get honest feedback where people say, that's really great. It's really not a good fit for what we're doing for whatever reason. And then once we know what we're doing as far as the portrait of a learner, if that's what we're doing, what are we going to do to make sure we've aligned the best resources to support all students for that? How can we provide that experiential learning? And I know there's been some talk as far as realigning some things. I had a chance to talk to briefly Mr. Bidlack, share some things. It looks like there's some great work already going on throughout the district. And so just working along side by side with that as well.
When we had the conversation with you last week, you mentioned that you would be out of your office the vast majority of the time.
Yes. Cannot
and-
sit in an office
Pardon?
all day. Yeah, cannot sit in an office all day,
Right.
every day.
So, and I was very privileged to go around with you around your high school in West Bloomfield and your portable desk and everything that you've got
Yes.
with a horn and the whole bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're in Bloomfield Hills High School. How similar or how different are you as a principal, as you as a superintendent, walking around Bloomfield Hills High School versus you as a principal?
To be honest, it's not going to be as often because obviously I'm in the high school every single day, right? That's needless to say. And there's more than one building in the school district. But it needs to be that same type of engagement in investing in people. The students that I got to meet today were amazing. One student, Noah, must have asked me 4 or 5 questions. I had a follow-up answer for Riley, but at some point she ducked out. And then a couple of the students, including the 2 ambassadors, stayed after to share some additional things. The students really want that. And it's not, I know you said high school, but they want that at the 1st grade level, the 3rd grade level. One young man, I wish I could have engaged him more when I walked in and said hi to him. He goes, I don't like your tie. It's like, okay, great. But not having the opportunity to engage and sit down with them a little bit more. Then what school was it where we had the ambassador, the class ambassador? This young lady, I told everyone I would hire her for something right now. She was amazing. She was able to tell me and articulate her learning and what was going on at every single station in the room. And her sense of pride was out of this world. If you're not in the buildings, you don't get to see that. You don't get to experience that. I'm a morning person, not a night person. I mean, we're running up against my bedtime almost now, right? But I like to get up early in the morning and get a lot of those clerical things done so that you can be out. And it doesn't always mean it has to be an all-day thing. It might just simply be for the next hour and a half, from 11 to 12:30, I'm going to Eastover. I'll be back after. And just be engaged at that time. It can't be you're constantly on the phone, texting every time you're there because you're not engaged. And people don't appreciate you coming from that point. Why'd you come if that's what you're going to do? You need to be engaged as much as possible. That's with students, and that's with all staff as well. I learned a long time ago as a child from a very great man who served as somebody I respect more than almost anyone. He's passed since. that there are no small people in an organization. That same time you spend with a custodian and a bus driver are just as important with someone that's a principal or a child, that everyone deserves your attention and time.
I'm wondering about the teachers and the principals.
Yeah.
We get feedback that in spite of us not wanting to do this, that some of our workforce feels that it's, the program du jour, and feel that we keep on moving their cheese. Is that a concern that you've had in West Bloomfield, and if so, how do you handle that?
Is definitely a concern. What do we do in education typically? Right? I'm stereotyping. We add. We don't ever take off. I think as the strategic plan gets finished up, we really need to see how we align all the curriculum we have. So we have some that's overlapping that we can take off and remove. Because you're right, which is a great book, by the way, but staff, they do feel, teachers in particular, we move their cheese. Here's the target. Just kidding, now it's here. Now it's here. Now we have a new initiative. The teachers that I talk to in my district K through 12 feel like they're dying on the vine with initiatives because nothing ever comes off. I think we need to look to see if there are things that can take off. We need to prioritize what do students really need to learn? What are the power standards? What do they need to learn at each grade level? Then how are we going to ensure that happens? How are we going to measure it? And really give some relief, not just to our teachers, but to our students.
Could you give me an example of what you took off in West Bloomfield over the last 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, one of the things we looked at was all of our core classes and our language classes. And we've been revising the curriculum the past 2 years. And what we've done is exactly what I said. We've looked at each unit. What are those power standards we really need to cover? How are we going to align it? What is that experiential learning thing that students are all going to be part of? All the other stuff, we're going to take off. We don't really need to have that there. So much of it also ends up being your passion. I know I was guilty of this early in my career. I loved World War II. So we need to talk about all the island hopping that took place during World War II, Iwo Jima, Guadalcanal. That was more about me than what was really interesting. So that's the big thing we've been doing at the high school, and that's provided the relief for the students as well, and it's provided some relief for staff because you know exactly what you need to focus on. Now, how you get there might be a little different. You might do things a little bit differently in your classroom, a little bit differently in your classroom, but as long as we're making sure that those standards are covered and that students know that, that gives you a little more autonomy as a staff member. And that's what teachers want to be able to do. But the accountability piece is going to be built in. What are we doing with that summative assessment and how it comes across?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think we've thoroughly covered the educational front, but on the business end of it, I have a question
Okay.
that goes to philosophy and thoughts. What's your philosophy or thoughts on outsourcing of services?
So, having watched the impact it's had at West Bloomfield, we've outsourced food, custodial, and transportation. It definitely has been an impact to the district. The hope is that you never have to outsource. But my philosophy, and I stated this earlier tonight, that if you ever have to make cuts, it needs to be as far away from the educational environment for children as possible.
Thank you.
With that, finally, do you have any questions for us?
I do, and if I could hear from you each individually, I'd appreciate it. Is what is your problem-solving process when all of you don't agree? And is it student-centered?
Shamefully, we don't have one at the moment. I mean, that's how I would tell you. This board needs to work on that. That's a major challenge for this board.
We have committed to developing board operating procedures as an adjunct to the policy. They are not crafted yet. That was sort of something we put on the menu after the search was over. So I would agree with Mark that we don't have an efficient problem-solving process at the time. I would say, though, that every last one of us is highly student-centered, and I've heard every conversation always steer back to what is good for kids. So we are 100% of one mind on that front.
I think, I would say that one of the strengths of our board, though, is that we're very diverse. We come from a lot of different disciplines and cultures, And I think that that's really a strength that we have. But I think that, just as my colleagues was mentioning, is that we might have different ways to tackle problems, and we haven't really melded those into a shared vision of, when this happens, what should we do? And so I think we eventually get there, but it's kind of messy.
Okay, that happens.
Yeah.
So I think it will be vitally important for the board to work with our new superintendent to build an 8-person team where we have trust and understand how we will work together.
Okay, thank you.
I think what's important, I think it's been flushed out, whether it's in the first round of questions, second round of questions. I think we all agree on some of these questions that we have. I think in terms of the method getting there, we may have different philosophies, but we all want what's best for Bloomfield. We all want what's best for students. And I think we're at a point where maybe it's through board operating procedures, maybe it's through dialogue. I think we'll get there. I think we've gotten a lot done. I think we're at the cusp, probably in the next 2 days, 3 days, obviously, of picking a new superintendent. I think we've done a significant. I don't think as a board we give ourselves enough credit for what we're getting done, regardless of our philosophies on how we're getting it there. So.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would echo that as well. I think, we're respectful of the diversity of opinion that's on this board, and there's a lot of it. People are strong-willed and passionate about their ideas.
Good.
So, you've got 7 people that come to the table prepared. We've done our homework. We've done additional work. We usually research things in addition to the stuff that we're given to look at. And we always respect each other's opinions. And also, I think we respect and honor the fact that they differ. I mean, it would be, to me, pointless to have 7 people that always agreed on everything. I think that's the point of having a diverse board. I think that we make each other feel comfortable enough and respected enough that everybody feels free to speak their mind. And I think that's really, like you said earlier, it's important with staff, it's important with students, that you have enough respect and trust that you can feel free to speak what is on your mind instead of, compromising or being quiet. What do we do when we disagree? Sometimes we change our opinions. It's part of being open-minded. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we just vote by majority. But what you hear is the honest and direct opinion of 7 people who will be honest with you.
Okay. Thank you.
The problem-solving process really has to be defined by the different lanes that we have. As a board, we're responsible for doing the what. As superintendent, you would be responsible for the how. So if the problem is a how question, that's not our job. That's yours to figure out with your cabinet. But if it is a what question, then that's something that we as a team of 8 need to work on collectively. And we can't do it without you, and you can't do it without us. So we need to work out as a team. So I would refine your question a little bit in terms of the problem-solving process. Is it a how question or a what question?
Thank you. With that, Mr. Watson, we have just public comment. You're welcome to stay, or we're done with the interview section.
Okay. Give me.
Yeah, you can give that. You can give that back to us.
Good seeing you too. You finished all 3 of his. Can we get one?
If anyone has impression sheets, and then if anyone wants to make public comment, now's the time for public comment. Okay, no public comment. If anyone wants to, you have public comment? Okay, sorry. Yes.
Just say your name.
Your name, yeah.
So they can take my address?
Yeah.
All right, I'm Lindsay Lankowski-Rapp. I live at 4105 Lake Ridge Lane in Okay. So I'm a mom. I have 2 little boys. I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. and they're going to be at Lone Pine Elementary in just a few years. I'm also a former student of Mr. Watson's at West Bloomfield High School. I'm a former student. I graduated from West Bloomfield High School in 2004. So I only found out about this a couple days ago. Someone actually posted on Facebook that he was up for this job. So I truly felt compelled to come here to address you guys today and kind of share my support for Mr. Watson. So at West Bloomfield, Mr. Watson, I'm getting emotional, was truly everybody's favorite teacher. I mean, he, if you had Mason Watson on your sophomore schedule, you knew you totally hit the jackpot. He's the teacher that really we all remembered after 17 years. I really think what made him different was that he really had the ability to connect with students on a way that a lot of other teachers really couldn't do. And he made the classroom environment a place we really wanted to be. He made genealogy fun. He made the Vietnam War fun, Gold Medal jacket. Everyone just called him Watson because, he really made us feel like we were his friend. And so he not only did he know all the students, but he really knew all of our parents too. So as a mom in this district, or soon to be with children in this district, I feel that it's really important that as parents we understand who our superintendent is, because they're going to be responsible for the decisions that are made that are directly going to impact our children and their future in education. So I'm really not speaking for myself, but I know for countless others of former students that are now in this district that we would be really excited about the possibility of having Watson back in our lives. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And with that, if there's, just fill out the impression sheets. With that, I will call for adjournment. See you guys tomorrow.